Okay, we're talking tonight about electing out of Social Security and Medicare. Remember that ministers are always considered by the IRS to be self-employed for purposes of Social Security and Medicare. Therefore, a minister would pay SECA taxes, Self-Employed Contributions Act taxes, instead of FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act taxes. FICA taxes are paid equally by the employee and the employer, and SECA taxes are paid only by the self-employed individual. The rate of taxation is the 15.3%, 12.4%, 12.4%, and Social Security tax, and 2.9% in Medicare tax. There's 6 requirements to exempt out of SECA. 1, be an ordained, commissioned, or licensed minister. Just like when we talked last week, in the ordaining or ministering, if you don't have a body that does that, the simple fact that you are acting as a minister will be sufficient to fulfill this requirement. Number 2, you had to be employed by a tax-exempt church or convention or association of churches. You had to file a timely election on Form 4361. You had to notify the ordaining, commissioning, or licensing body. You had to receive the approval of Form 4361 from the IRS, and you must not have made a disqualifying election. Now, this is a screenshot of what Form 4361 is like. And we're going to see on the next slide the Section 7 expanded and looked at, so we can read what's in Section 7. Section 7 says that I certify that I'm conscientiously opposed to, or because of my religious principles, I'm opposed to, the acceptance for services I perform as a minister, a member of a religious order not under a vow of poverty, or Christian Science practitioner, of any public insurance that makes payments in the event of death, disability, old age, or retirement, or that makes payments toward the cost of or provides services for medical care. Public insurance includes insurance systems established by the Social Security Act. Paragraph 2, I certify that as a duly ordained, commissioned, or licensed minister of a church, or a member of a religious order not under a vow of poverty, I have informed the ordaining, commissioning, or licensing body of my church or order that I am conscientiously opposed to, or because of religious principles, I'm opposed to, the acceptance for services I perform as a minister, or as a member of a religious order, of any public insurance payments in the event that any public insurance that makes payments in the event of death, disability, old age, or retirement, or that makes payments toward the cost of or provides services for medical care, including the benefits of any insurance system established by the Social Security Act. I certify that I have never filed Form 2031 to revoke a previous exemption from Social Security coverage on earnings as a minister, member of a religious order not under a vow of poverty, or Christian Science practitioner, and I request to be exempted from paying self-employment tax on my earnings from services as a minister, a member of a religious order not under a vow of poverty, or a Christian Science practitioner under Section 1402E of the Internal Revenue Code. I understand that the exemption, if granted, will apply only to these earnings. Under penalties of perjury, I declare that I have examined this application, and to the best of my knowledge and belief, it is true and correct. Some items to note. The opposition is to acceptance of any public insurance payments, not to the act of being insured or having public insurance cover you. Is to the acceptance of payments by the public insurance system. The exemption is only for income from services performed as a minister. Participation in private insurance programs is not prohibited. Only Social Security and Medicare systems are prohibited if you exempt out. Then the due date to file this form, 4361, is the second year in which you earned more than $400 in self-employment income, of which any portion is from ministerial services. The clock starts running the first year in which you have net self-employment earnings of more than $400, any portion of which is from ministerial services. Now, as an aside, if you have self-employment earnings of less than $400, you do not have to pay any self-employment tax on those earnings. So anytime you had to pay self-employment tax is when you have to worry about, did you have any portion of that from ministerial services? If you have a net negative self-employment earnings from ministerial services, that does not count as a year. The filing must be made by the due date of the return for the second year in which you have net self-employment earnings of more than $400, any portion of which is from ministerial services. The 2 years do not have to be consecutive. So you could have worked back in 2010, had 1 year of net self-employment earnings of more than $400. You could not work again as a minister until this year and have net self-employment earnings this year of more than $400, in which case your exemption or your application for exemption would be due this year, because this would be the second year in which you had net self-employment earnings of $400, some portion of which came from ministerial services. If you paid self-employment taxes on the first year, and then you got approval for exemption on 4361, those prior self-employment taxes can be refunded, but you only have, remember, the 2 years to do the election. So you'd only have 1 year of form of self-employment taxes that you have paid before you got the form 4361 approved that could be refunded. Since 1977, Congress has allowed for the revocation of the exemption on 3 separate occasions: on 1977 returns, on 1987 returns, and under a law passed in 1999 on either 2000 or 2001 returns. And those 3 occasions, along with any filing done prior to 1968, are the disqualifying elections that you have over here, item 6, not have made a disqualifying election. Paragraph 4 here, notifying the ordaining, item number 4, notifying the ordaining, commissioning, or licensing body. That is done in this second paragraph, that you are in essence notifying them by this second paragraph that you are exemption. You're claiming this exemption. I have had many preachers ask me through the years, all of them since 2001, if there is any way they can elect out of revoke this election where they elected out of Social Security, Medicare taxes. But Congress has only acted those 3 times: 77 returns, 87 returns, and 2000 or 2001 returns. If you have filed Form 4361 previously, and you wish you did elect out of Social Security, and you would like to revoke that election, once again be covered by Social Security, my only suggestion is to contact your congressperson and suggest they pass another law similar to the 1999 Act, which gave ministers the right to revoke their original election. Wayne Jackson has an article he has posted on Christian Courier titled "May a Minister Opt Out of Social Security?" and references an article by Dan Wade in the January 2000 Gospel Advocate. So I advise you to reference both those articles for your own information, give you more information about this, and to give you more things to think about. We also, for those taking this class for credit, I've assigned a paper that is due the last class of the semester on whether you choose to opt out or not opt out, and the reasons for that. So what if you can't prove your election? Eade was a minister back in Virginia in 1991. The court there in Virginia held that the receipt of the application approved by the IRS, I forget how many copies you have to send the IRS, Form 4361. I think it's 3. But one of those, as they approve it, they send it back to you. They sent one to Eade, but he could not find it. So the federal court held that this was a perfunctory administrative task and was not required for the exemption. If you were like Eade and could convince the jury that you had filed, then the court would hold your election. If you cannot prove your election and you don't want to go to court, There are some things in the audit manual that the IRS puts out that they suggest you may do. To determine if a minister is exempt from self-employment tax, request that he or she furnish a copy of the approved Form 4361 if it is not attached to the return. If the taxpayer cannot provide a copy, order a transcript for the year under examination. The ADP and IDRS information handbook shows where the minister's self-employment exemption codes are located on the transcripts and what the codes mean. The transcripts will not show exemption status prior to 1988. If the transcript does not show a MIN-SE indicator, then the taxpayer still claims that he or she is exempt from self-employment tax. The Taxpayer Relations Branch at the Service Center, where the Form 4361 was filed, can research this information and provide the taxpayer with a copy. The Social Security Administration in Baltimore can also provide the information on exemption for an individual. One thing that I will say, if you do exempt out of Social Security and Medicare, is that you make some arrangements. I won't say you'll easily cover that, but you make arrangements and you buy some sort of insurance or retirement or whatever to cover you if you don't have Social Security to cover retirement or Medicare to recover medical costs that you may be facing when you're older, age 65 or older. Now, that is strongly urged that you do that. If you have done a secular job for over 40 quarters, 10 years worth of earnings, then you may be covered under Medicare and Social Security without having made arrangements to claim all that for yourself or to have some equivalent money to fund those things. But if you don't have 10 years worth or 40 quarters worth of secular earnings, then you would not be covered under Social Security or Medicare. Let's stop sharing that. And share this one. Okay, we're going to cover a few current issues. There'll be more of these we'll cover throughout the semester. But for those who have not heard of a Freedom from Religion Foundation, I first heard about them in the early 2000s. They filed a lawsuit in 2013 claiming that they should get housing allowance. Their executives should get just like a minister, housing allowance. The court in 2015 threw their lawsuit out because they could not demonstrate they had been harmed. So the court just threw it out. So they filed it again in 2016. They filed their original returns in 2016, filed amended returns for their executives, two of their executives did, to claim housing allowance and asked that the court refund the amount they claimed as housing allowance. The court, I taught this class in 2017. I taught this class in 2018 at Polishing the Pulpit, and they had not settled the issue there. In 2019, the court ruled that the minister's housing allowance was there for non-religious reasons, that there were valid reasons other than religious reasons that Congress had granted to ministers the right to have housing allowance. So they lost this lawsuit. They filed another lawsuit about filing form 1023, filing form 990. My wife and I go to Blue Ridge, Georgia, and went into a barbecue restaurant up there one time, fairly close to downtown. And the barbecue restaurant used to offer people who came in with Sunday's bulletin from church a discount on their meal. And they quit doing this. They had a sign up in the restaurant that they couldn't do it any longer. And I asked the gentleman why he couldn't do it. And he told me that he had been sued by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He said he recognized when the girl walked in that she was going to be trouble, and she wanted a discount, but she didn't have a bulletin from church because she hadn't gone to church that morning, but she wanted a discount anyway. So we talked for quite a bit about what had happened. So it's not just a national thing that the Freedom from Religion Foundation is doing. It's local, very local. Blue Ridge, a very small town up in North Georgia. And yet that particular restaurant probably has less than 25 seats total in the restaurant. And, you know, they're there making sure that they can gripe about anything that has preference given to religious bodies. At the time I did this in 2018, there was a question as to where housing allowance was allowed for more than one house. The IRS has since come out and said that housing allowance can only be taken for one house. The Religious Liberty and Charitable Deductions Act of 1997, that's the law, the federal law, that allowed the IRS to require that you send letters for charitable contributions in excess of $250. And that you have the letter from the charitable organization before you file your tax return claiming the deduction. Now, Piedmont Road, we send out letters for every contribution that somebody makes. Now, we make sure that everything over 250 is there, but any contribution somebody makes, we list them on the form and we send them out, give them out about this time or mail them or whatever to all our donors. I'm going to skip the next item. In property taxes, most property that is held by a church is exempt from state property taxes and county property taxes. State and local sales tax, on the other hand, in Georgia, there is one exemption from state and local sales tax that churches may take advantage of, and that's if you buy bells to go in a bell tower. That's the only exemption from state and local sales taxes. Anything else that the church buys is subject to both state and local sales taxes. We, for years at Piedmont Road, were organized as a trusteeship. But things have changed so much over the last few years that sometime in the early 2010s, we got a lawyer to work with us, Matt Vega, who is the chair of the legal department at Freed-Hardeman University, worked with us. And we organized ourselves under the nonprofit rules of the state of Georgia as a non-member organization. And the eldership is automatically deemed to be the people who are in charge of the legal organization. So every year we have a meeting where we elect officers. I file something with the Secretary of State every year to show that who our officers are, to show where we are. We file things, you know, our annual budget, our annual reports, financial reports. We do a few things because of the legal organization that's required by the state. Now, prior to our legal organization, while we were a trusteeship, every member of the congregation was joint and severally liable for anything that the organization may be liable for. So that's a major reason that we became a legal organization under the laws of Georgia, the nonprofit laws that legally organized us that way. And the last point I want to talk about is the open carry laws. Each church, now I'm not a lawyer, not trying to make this a legal document, but I want you to understand that every church has the right to decide whether they will ask their people to declare whether they are carrying or whether they will not ask their people. So if they ask, they have to ask everyone, and they have the right then to tell someone that they prefer them not to bring, or they have the right to say, we'll only allow these particular people to carry in our firearms in our buildings. If they don't ask, then they can't ask anyone. And we have security groups. We have a group at our congregation that we have the doors locked all the time. I have seen the video of where the gunman came into the congregation in Texas and shot 2 people. And it's not something I want to go through. So you know, security is a big thing that we need to think about. We need to be aware of, but you also need to be aware of, if you decide not to know, you can't ask anyone. If you decide to know, you must ask everyone. That is our lesson for tonight. And I apologize for not having recorded it while I thought I did the first time. But if you have questions or want anything that I left out, I tried to make sure I included a few things here that I did not cover in the earlier message. So if you got questions, just send them to me. Thank you.